Hello and welcome to Mondays on Tuesdays podcast. Oh, it is good to see the envelope moving, showing that my audio setup is working. It has been a maddening 10 minutes of tweaking this, tweaking that. I don't know exactly what happened. Turns out, opening a web browser to test my microphone turned it on or something. I don't know. After all these years of working with computers, there are times when I am genuinely puzzled. And I think that's actually kind of how life should be. There should always be a level of mystery. So, the topic of today is freedom is, in fact, free. And I'm going to talk not only about how the best things in life are free, but how the entire concept of our American association with the word freedom is somewhat problematic. But before that, I'm going to go into what I think is the most profound way of looking at the world of my life. This happened to me after I got out of the hospital for having more or less a suicidal behavior breakdown in 2011. And then I was in therapy learning bits and bobs about how the DSM, which is the Diagnostic Something Manual, classifies mental disorders, and reading a lot about different disorders and kind of an explanation of how my inner mind worked in a way that was actually really inspiring. I don't know if it's because, I was reading about the worst of what can happen with humans when their mind breaks down. And I was like, oh, this is, it's inspiring to be measured against that yardstick instead of the yardstick of how do you be perfect and exceptional. I don't know exactly what it was, but what I'm going to share with you is so amazing. And it's the idea that your subconscious does not take you seriously. You want to do something, your motivation's going to want to do something else. You want to change a habit, subconscious doesn't want you to. And this feels like a prison at first until you realize that, we think our conscious thoughts and reactions are running the show. Yeah, really, it's our subconscious that's running the show. But here's the interesting thing: your subconscious is like a groove, and the more you etch a groove, the deeper it gets. And so essentially, you can kind of equate that your subconscious is the sum total of your history combined with the sum total of the scenarios you have been in. And this groove, you're almost like moving with momentum too quickly to stop. It's going in a certain direction. And when you consciously want something else, sometimes that groove says, no, no, you're going to get uncontrollably angry now. No, no, you're going to reach for that bottle of alcohol or smoke that cigarette or do that thing that you consciously don't want to do. But there's so much momentum taking you towards where you're going that you can't stop. And your subconscious is that idea of uncontrollable momentum. And so what I have found, and this, I was debating whether the topic should be the hive or the collective, but I've chosen freedom isn't free because I'm going to try and take apart the word of freedom as it relates to American exceptionalism after the break. But what I have found works the best is to accept this way of living and believe that, hey, you know what? If my subconscious needs evidence to change, evidence it will have. And so when I need confidence, I don't just build myself up in confidence. I go do something I'm good at and let the actual evidence of that thing I'm good at give me real confidence. If I need to feel like I belong, I do something in service to other people, and then I take in their welcoming thank you to me as a sense of belonging. And in this way, I'm not just separating myself from the world by trying to have certain motivations and feel certain feelings. I'm actually out with the world creating the experiences that will get my subconscious in position and in the motivation and in the direction that I want to be. So I'm kind of like controlling the groove by using scenarios to carve it with the full acceptance that I do not get to tell my subconscious mind what to do. It is like a steering wheel. You don't want it to be too sensitive because when you're going quickly, you'd like a sense of stability in your life. That's your subconscious. Back soon. Wow. Back after that, slamming jams. I have so much energy. I got a rush of energy as I started explaining this concept that I've been kind of down all day. And I don't honestly know if it's a good thing that I have this much energy. I always kind of worry about that because I'm such a sort of stop and start character. And when I was first diagnosed with bipolar disorder, that was later realized that's not what you have. But I do have a larger mood range than most people, as you've probably figured out if you've been listening to this podcast. Um, what really, really, really helped me was the idea that if I'm too excited and I feel like putting on the brakes, put them on slowly. And if I'm too down in the dumps, don't rev myself up quickly. Because what I suffered the most from was that bouncy feeling where I just feel like it's too much, too little, too much, and then there's extremes come and it's no fun. And I just kind of realized that easing back to even is a wonderful thing. And easing back to even is what I would consider a very un-American concept because I was raised with the version of America where we were the best country in the world. And it was important to get the best grades and go to the best school and the best of this, the best of this, the best of this, kind of like a big sky's the limit view of things. And there's this word that comes up all the time called freedom. We have freedom in this country, and it's one of those words that you can't really quantify what it means. There was a sort of corporate motivational seminar I very much respected, and he called this a blurry word. And the concept of a blurry word is good, bad, favorable. And they were basically saying that whenever things are important and on the line, it's important to be specific and avoid blurry words because blurry words avoid two different groups to walk away feeling like they understand each other when they really don't. What's good to me may not be good to you. Freedom to me may not be freedom to you. And I think that the real value of getting out of these sort of dark economic and political times is to understand that neither individuals nor the broader scenario are solely responsible for what's happening in that person's life in specific. Like, for example, someone who's unemployed right now spent a bunch of years working on their career, or someone who's never really worked on their career. And it's so tempting to blame the individual and say, oh, well, the science of wealth is to, work on your skills, get really good at stuff. Yeah, I can tell you how well that's going for my bank account right now. And what I'm trying to get at here is the idea that applying skills to a situation is when wealth really, really comes. And a community rising out of poverty is when, the freedom to interact with that community really, really matters. And we have such a bad relationship with phrases like curb freedom or limit freedom. Americans are very, very bad at accepting that limits exist at all. But we do accept limits on freedom in the sense that I don't have the freedom to go punch someone in the face just because they're annoying. I don't have the freedom to grab a soda bottle out of someone's hand as they're walking down the street. Those are freedoms I don't get. I don't want them, by the way. Just want to clarify these are not the things I fantasize about doing in a sort of libertarian, no government society. But we have such a bad relationship with both limits and also not blaming individuals. And I think this kind of comes down to the sort of mind over matter stoic perspective that we often take. This, oh, you're made of tougher stuff, just pull yourself up by your bootstraps. And to me, the real answer to this is to realize that you can be really, really good at something and there be no company that you can access who needs you to do it, and you can still be totally broke. Um, you can be really, really generous and surrounded by people who just take and take and take and take and take, and then again you're really broken. So it is the individual and the scenario, and that individual probably needs to understand some boundaries. And that scenario probably needs to understand who is entitled to what. And that's a very hard thing to figure out. I mean, we have money in order to figure that out, and look how that's going. It's a very hard thing to figure out. But to me, the most advantageous thing to do is to understand, spiritually, emotionally, in terms of like a reckoning of the soul, that if you feel stuck or you feel like you want things you don't have, it's involving your environment and your scenario in what you need that will get you to where you need to be. As strange as that sounds, because you're trying to improve your circumstances, talking to people about what they need and what you can do for them is the best way to get your skills to work in the world, even though it really seems like sitting down and focusing on them to eternity, which is my kind of thing. And then here's the real interesting thing: if you need confidence, don't psych yourself up. Do something you're good at. Do something you can't fail at, like vacuum the floor, clean the dishes, make a list of the groceries you need and go pick up a few if you have the money. Or pick something that you always been saying you were going to do, a book you want to read, a movie you'd like to rewatch. Do that. And when you do that, fully absorb the confidence that it gives you to have done that and move from this idea based way of living to a more action and involvement based way of living. And I think if that were to happen on a massive enough scale to enough Americans, we would kind of start to poke a hole at this "I got mine, I don't care if the world burns" kind of mentality. Because when you realize that the way you have accomplished things is by interacting with the world, you're less likely to freak out about your tax dollars going to the transportation system that helps that world keep going. You're less likely to freak out about your tax dollars going to the education system that makes the world worth walking through, because crime is down, because people can access employment because they were properly educated. And so, this idea of freedom is free is the concept that the best things in life are free. Watching the sunset, cool breeze, good weather, good health, time with friends, time with family, good food. A lot of these things involve things you pay for, but it's not the money that went into them, because sometimes the park is free parking, sometimes you have to pay to get into an exclusive resort. Sometimes the food is at a, fancy pants expensive hotel. Sometimes it's your grandmother's cooking. And so the money's not the determining factor in the experience. And that's why I say the best things in life are free. And I think that as soon as that inverts into money for money's sake, everything gets really screwed up. And so to me, the phrase "freedom isn't free" is kind of usually associated with like the military sacrifices for our nation state of American freedom. And the reason I've named this episode "Freedom is Free" is because I feel like when the valuable things in life are the things that don't cost money, they're like beyond money value kinds of things. I feel like we can talk about the natural limits of freedom, because the natural limit is that as you appreciate your environment, you don't crave freedoms that stomp on your neighbors. You don't crave freedoms that stomp on other people. And you don't define freedom as the right to do absolutely anything you want at absolutely any time, because that's boring. We live in an environment where, yeah, like a spiritual level, we probably have some magnetism, like the Wiccan rule of the law of three: what you send out comes back to thee times three. Um, I'm really not a big supporter of the Thelemite interpretation of "do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law." That sounds a lot like free market capitalists that are just like, let the market sort it out, which is just kind of a nickname for them wanting to be a big bully. And I think that at the same time that, you know, what you put out comes back to thee times three. Yeah, but there's also a whole world of people influencing you the whole time. So it's this combination of like your intentions coming back, but then also everyone else's intentions and the weather and everything else. And the reason I'm touching on the spiritual side right now is I've heard more from my conversations with people that that's actually what they want to talk about recently. And I think it comes down to this idea of America going through kind of a reckoning of the soul and getting back in touch with what matters. And while we need money as like an accounting method to help people attribute their value and plug people in and reward people for really good things and make sure that people are participating, we also need to understand so deeply that money is a means to things that are valueless, that the best things in life are free. And in the same way, the trajectory of our life is not something we can just choose to turn on and off. We have momentum and habits and behaviors that are all in motion, and we have to actually do things to influence them. So think about that. Think about how, whether or not it works for you to just tell yourself to calm down, or whether or not it works to, drink tea, grab a cup of coffee, go for a walk, and the action is what, recognizing the environment is what calms you down. Think about if you're procrastinating, if it helps to just take like a few minutes to do something you can finish and just kind of get the juices going, almost like a warm up. And it's this idea of not accepting that you can pretend your life away, but you can actually intentionally seed it with actions and kind of like engineer scenarios that get you into the feeling you want. And over time, the change can be incredibly profound. And hopefully, that gets you in a positive space where you can thoroughly enjoy the freedom that is, in fact, free.